So, quantum biology is really the study of quantum effects in living systems, like our own body. So, we're talking about quantum mechanics such as quantum tunneling, going through an obstacle, quantum entanglement, where two things are connected yet separated by distance, quantum coherence. But really, in simple terms, it's the study of these unseen waves of information and how they guide our biology, how that is the foundation to what we see in this chemical mechanical model that we're so used to approaching health with. You know, we talk about health as a chemical balance or a mechanical alignment, but when you think about it, we are trillions and trillions of cells. Each one of these cells is completing hundreds of thousands of tasks, if not millions, each second. Mathematically, that's impossible with this idea of random collision, where you have biological keys, nutrients, enzymes, and they are bouncing around randomly, trying to find their receptor to unlock the receptor and have action happen. Those numbers, trillions of cells, millions of, and that gets us into the billions, the trillions, the quadrillions of reactions happening each second in the body, that's mathematically impossible with randomness. And that's where quantum biology comes in, and it's a beautiful expansion of what we already know that brings in this idea that it's not random, that there are unseen waves of information out there guiding life, and our body can act as an antenna for that information. It's exquisite, actually.
Yes, this really is proof of divine intelligence, isn't it? It really is. And I love the way that you, in the book, you talk about how our bodies are connected with all of these invisible fields all over our earth and our cosmos as well. So I'd love to dive into that, because you talk about our bodies communicating with the unseen forces of light and sound and electricity, and you've got 7 steps which you clearly identify in the book. And could you just kind of top line those for us? Would that be helpful?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Pam. It's, you know, on a simple, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it would be that we are embedded in this universal flow of energy. And the more that we can ground down, the more that we can become immersed in this flow of energy, the healthier we will be, the longer, more vital our lives will be, the more expanded our consciousness will be, the deeper sense of center we'll be able to achieve. And that's really what is needed at this time. And so I go through the book in 7 different steps to break it down for people. And I go through the science and I talk all about the mechanisms, but I make sure to end each chapter with like, okay, here's what we do in a practical way. And I start with this idea of water in the body and how water in the body takes on a liquid crystalline structure. It truly acts as this antenna for these unseen blueprints, really, of life. Whether we're talking about light or sound, whether we're talking about the biofield, whether we're talking about conscious intentions, how I can sense what someone is experiencing across the globe, right? These vibration, these waves that hold energy and information, the water inside our body, around our cells, our DNA, our fascial network, it acts as an antenna. It takes on a different organization and it becomes like a liquid crystal. And it is able to capture and store and then amplify and transmit this information throughout the body. And so I spend a whole chapter talking about how we support the water inside of our body, what that water looks like, and how we can build it so we can be a bigger antenna, a clear antenna. And then I go on to talk about our liquid crystalline structures in the body. Now, these structures, like our DNA, our cell membranes, our, again, fascial network. All of these things are like liquid crystalline in structure. And we're used to using liquid crystal technology in our everyday screens, right? The reason I get to sit here and see your beautiful face and talk with you today is because I'm on a computer with a film of liquid crystal technology. And what that means is all of the molecules are organized in a certain formation. And when an electrical impulse comes in, when an impulse of energy comes in, they all reorient together as a group. And in our screens, on our telephones, our computers, our TV screens, that looks like different amounts of light coming in for these beautiful pictures. But we have structures in the body that I just mentioned that also act together as a cohesive, collective group where there are energy inputs and they all react together as a group. And this allows for seamless communication throughout the body. There is a language of frequency. It's like the comparison of I can send you a letter in the mail, and that's perfectly acceptable. You will get that letter and we can communicate that way. But if I want to send you a message right now, I use these unseen waves of information in our Wi-Fi. I send you an email, I send you a text, and it gets there almost instantaneously. The same thing's happening in the body. We have that chemical, mechanical side of our being, but we also have this language of frequency. Every single element on the periodic table has its own unique vibration, its own song. And like two tuning forks, we can communicate in the body with this vibration. Our proteins, our enzymes, our DNA, our cell membranes, and the water that lines them communicate in this beautifully sophisticated language of frequency and vibration, which is much faster, much more efficient than this chemical mechanical model. And then I go on to talk about the body as an electric being. We run on electrical charge. I go into what that means. I mean, every single cell has its own unique and very specific electrical voltage.
Wow,
And
every
when that
cell.
voltage,
Wow, every single
yes,
cell. Wow.
yes, every single cell. And so that means that whatever we're looking at, the immune system, the heart, whatever it is, the digestive system, they all have this electrical foundation. They all run on voltage. And when that voltage diminishes, then we start to see symptoms. I mean, there's a way to look at the body where pain, inflammation, symptoms, disconnect happens when we lose that electrical charge, when we become deficient in that flow of energy.
And that's
Then I
partly
go on
because of
to look.
all the sort of Wi-Fi signals, etc. You know, all of the electronics that we have in our modern lives are quite degenerative for our natural electricity, our natural voltage. Correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. They're degenerative. I mean, really what we're looking at is we've become so disconnected from our true nature and our relationships with water, the electrical voltage and flow of electrons through our cosmos, the rising and setting of the sun, the seasons, our own conscious train of thought, right? All of these things are really relationships that hold us. And so that's what I talk about. I talk about that electrical being. I talk about our relationship with nature and how we are part of this tapestry of flow, sound, sights, smells, electrical charge in nature, and we're meant to sync with that. We're meant to move in vibration with that, and modern life has done an incredible job at disconnecting us from that. And then I go on to talk about sound and our heart coherence and how our mind, our consciousness is foundational. It's first, then comes matter. It is the conductor that gets all these pieces, all these instruments that are our cells and proteins and tissues and organs to play that song of life. I talk about the microbiome and the immune system and how they communicate with electricity and light and voltage and frequency. I talk about how our cells communicate with electromagnetic frequency. The electromagnetic frequency of our cells guides their behavior, their movement. It decides their differentiation, how they become an ear or an elbow. And then I end the book with a reminder, which I've thread through all the chapters, that this isn't new knowledge. Quantum biology is an incredible emerging field, but it brings us full circle back to what ancient indigenous cultures always spoke of, that we are energy beings, that we are embedded in a flow of energy, and that not only do we need to tend to these relationships, but we have a responsibility to care for these relationships, for the ground that we walk on, for the plants outside of our house, inside of our house. All of these things are not only a place that can hold us, but they're a place that we need to tend to, because we don't end at the barrier of our skin, right? We are connected with all of these things.
And I love that theme through the book of the remembrance of ancient wisdom, this kind of sense of involution of it. It isn't a new invention, it's a remembrance of what we already knew way back in terms of ancient wisdom and shamanic connection to the land and the cycles and the seasons. And it's only, and Dr. Zach Bush talks about this really with all of his focus on the soil, because unless you have good soil, you'll never have good microbiome. So again, it's the outer equals the inner. So I loved all of that deep dive into ancient wisdom that you covered as well. It was really beautiful. And do you feel, Catherine, that water may play an even bigger part in our health going forwards because of all these new light codes that are coming in? And of course, the water will absorb them, and then we are ingesting the water. So it isn't just that we're breathing in the light codes and absorbing them through our skin. It's that we are ingesting the water at the same time, which is higher frequency. Do you feel that? Is that going to be part of our evolution?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. That's the first chapter because I think that's the foundation. Yeah. I think the water that we drink, the water that we go to and sit on the banks of the river or the beach, those natural bodies of water that hold information, the water within us, this seems to be the conduit for this information. And it is so vital. It is so much more than drink your 8 glasses of water a day and you'll be hydrated, right? Hydration now is a synonym for the ability to pick up on this information that's so very vital for our rapid evolution that's occurring right now.
Yeah, beautiful. Because I think water will play a bigger and bigger part as we move forwards, and also it may also, I think it will enable us to hold more light in our bodies as we move forwards, because the light codes are coming in via the water as well. So I think there's going to be quite a significant shift towards that light body. You know, the loss of density, and maybe eating less, maybe eating more lightly, more plant-based, etc. And maybe even taking more energy directly from the sun. Don't try that at home unless you know what you're doing. But we become more light beings and sun beings as perhaps we were in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you look at it, this idea that all of our energy comes from food is really a misunderstanding, right? Our mitochondria are utilizing food, but they're utilizing light, they're utilizing electricity, they're utilizing electromagnetic frequency for our cellular energy. So it's not just food. We have this immense capacity to utilize this information for cellular energy, for health, for expanded consciousness. and we just need to access it. You know, my publisher's like, this is a lot of information. Do we want to split this up? And it's like, no, let's give the full roadmap because we need to access this information now.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. And I love the way also that you shifted the whole focus from kind of sickness into self-responsibility for health, how we can in very simple day-to-day practical ways take on responsibility for our own health and vitality, our kind of life force to sustain us through not only good health but longer years perhaps, living much longer. You know, it's very empowering. I found your book incredibly empowering in the way it was written, which is, of course, a big part of New Earth and where we're headed as well. So, yeah, beautiful. So I'd love to talk to you also about psychoneuroimmunology, because this is a fascinating area. And can you firstly share with the audience what you mean by psychoneuroimmunology?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
But it really is just a big word for how our thoughts act as a guide, as the stimulus to biology in the body. And we really could call it psychoneuroendocrine immunology, right? We could even make it even bigger because our thoughts direct our neurological action, which guide biological action in the body. What is that cell doing? What is that biological cascade of hormones, inflammatory state? All of these different things are guided by consciousness first. And so that understanding that it starts first with our thoughts is so important for people. I teach practitioners and people about a quantum biology approach to health, and I've taught people that are health workers in the prison system, and they express these prisoners can't go out and see the morning sun. They can't ground when they want. They don't have choice over what they're eating, right? It's such a restricted environment. What do they have? And they have what we all have. The most powerful tool in us is that consciousness. And when you look at ideas of quantum consciousness, you see theories about, again, that echo these ancient indigenous theories of it starting as a field. Our nerves in the brain, our neurons in the brain aren't firing and then giving us a thought. They are acting as a radio receiver for that conscious field that runs through everything. Right? And we see that in some of the latest quantum biology research. We see that from Curran, from his incredible team at Howard University looking at microtubules. Well, and how they can connect to this consciousness through these flows of energy and electrons. We see microtubules in every cell in the body, in every animal on the planet, in every plant, right? It's this geometric structure where consciousness comes first, and that's what guides matter. And when we can understand that and embody that, it changes everything.
So is that a question, Catherine, of, one of the ways we can do that is to set clear intentions about great health. I mean, every morning I wake up and I say, I live in perfect radiant health. And that sets that for the day. And I won't entertain any wobbles because I don't want to give energy to what I don't want in the body. Is that a significant part of this psychoneuroimmunology? Because it's to do with the thoughts and feelings, isn't it, affecting your health?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is a beautiful practice. Before I even get out of bed, when I'm sort of in that liminal state between sleep and waking, my eyes are still closed. I do the same thing. I go through gratitude first. I'm thankful, and it's like a ripple. I'm thankful for me, my family, it just ripples out. I'm thankful for the universe. And here is who I am. right? I'm starting another day, introducing myself as that radiant being of health that is open to the highest possibilities and to taking steps towards that highest self and that highest potential. And our cells are listening, right? Our cells don't know the difference between our internal terrain and our external terrain. If you think about it, if it's waves of information, it's just waves of information. Whether that comes from outside or inside, that conscious intention is a direct line to our biological function, whether we're talking about hormones, inflammation, pain, whether we're talking about function in the body, cardiovascular function, respiratory function, how the digestive system works. Those cells, each one of them is listening. And we know this from incredible work from people like Bruce Lipton, and the idea that our stem cells are not yet set. They are listening for what they should become, right? And this idea that this cerebral spinal fluid, this river that runs in the center of our body, filled with these proteins and this liquid crystalline water that can act as an antenna, that cerebral spinal fluid is potential at its very first definition. It is a sea of potential, and it is coming up from the sacrum into the brain, into those ventricles, into the third ventricle by our pineal gland, and it is picking up on this conscious intention. That's really first. I mean, when we think about health advice out there, it's like, eat this, do this, don't do that, very black and white, only one way, you know? And not a lot of people are talking about do what Pam is doing, right? Talk to your body, tell your body, and don't entertain the wobbles. I love that you said that. Don't entertain the wobbles. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've had to learn a lot about my health because I did have a lot of ill health, and I know you did too, Catherine, in your earlier years. And what saved my life, I think, was in 2018. I had 2 fecal transplants that saved my life because my microbiome was then down to, after 15 years of high dose antibiotics, it was down to 1 out of 10. So however great my diet, I couldn't actually absorb any food. And it was through the 2 fecal transplants and some hilarious appointments with the nurses, I have to say, but that's for another day. And that saved my life, and it turned my microbiome around to 9 out of 10 after those implants. So I'm super grateful for that, but that kind of kick-started my health. But I've had to learn so much about my approach to health and the thoughts, which are the electrical impulses, which create the emotions, which are the magnetic wave, which affect every single cell in your body. And you know, that is such a massive contributor to how good our health is. So we have huge influence. Again, we're not victims of our health or victims of whatever the current health system doles out to us. We can step into our empowerment with our own health and say, right, from this moment on, I'm going to take charge and improve my health. And I'm living testimony to that, actually, over the last 15, although I've got older over the last 15 years, my health has got better every single year. And so I'm so grateful. So much of your book resonated. And I know you had a lot of ill health in your early years, didn't you, when you were at medical school?
I did. Yes, it was that second year of naturopathic medical school. It was that weed out year where they just pile on the stress. And my nervous system didn't have that foundation. And I got really sick. I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune conditions, Hashimoto thyroiditis and ulcerative colitis affecting the GI tract. And I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. It was just sort of like this domino effect where one thing after the other went wrong. And I was in the perfect place to get better. It was the National College of, or National University of Natural Medicine, and it has a dual program with Chinese medicine. So I had all these options available to me. I was right down the hill from an allopathic sort of modern medicine teaching facility, but there was still something missing. And that's when I was doing clinical rotations underneath a physician, and she was my physician as well. And she kept pushing me to look at psychoneuroimmunology, how thoughts are affecting our biological state and health. And, Pam, I was resistant. I was like, I don't feel good. I do not have time to open up Pandora's box, right? And kind of,
I understand. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But when I did, I realized the significance of how our thoughts impact our biology. And it's not a measure of perfection, right? I think when we've, like I did at the time, thought, oh no, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to have to, face past traumas. This is just too big of a hurdle. And really, it's just an observation. It's a folding in, an understanding of how our thoughts impact our biology. It's not a directive to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's a directive to be whole, to accept your thoughts, to have some kind of observation of them. A lot of us have these subconscious trains of thought that we were handed as a young child that have no bearing on our actual being. We're not worthy, we're not good enough, all of these different things that aren't ours. And so coming into observation of that, just noticing that can make a difference. I have a lot of patients in that same realm of gastrointestinal issues, autoimmune conditions, people that are really sick. I've treated a lot of veterans. And it's this idea of, well, when is it going to fix? When do we flip the switch? And it isn't that black and white. It's about holding those experiences with the same weight we would hold a memory about getting ice cream when we were young, right? Holding them in the field all together and moving forward from there. And it's not a dictate of perfection. It's a remembering, a wholeness, a return to our true self.
Yeah, I love that, and sort of seeing yourself as being in the flow of life. That organic flow of life that is so beautiful. And if you can see yourself in that flow rather than a separate individual who's in a tough place as a victim, and what has life done to me? I mean, those are two very different perceptions of your health, aren't they? That when you're in victim mode, it's much harder for you to recover because, as you say, you just can't get over that hurdle. You're so depleted. But trying to see yourself in the flow of all life, which I think is the new paradigm we're really moving into. I know it just the ancient Lemurian culture just keeps coming back to me, that they saw everything as oneness, and they were all part of that flow of oneness. That they wouldn't kill to eat. They were telepathic with all of the animal world, the trees, the plants. All of that beauty, that flow of beauty. If we can get ourselves to that place, I think it's much easier to heal as well, because we have the support of the whole system, have the support of nature, as it were.
Yes.
And that feels a much, much easier, healthier place to be without putting pressure and deadlines on yourself as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it doesn't negate that bad things have happened, right? It's not a repression or a denial or a turning a blind eye. It's a embracing of it all in this loving manner, this loving embrace, and then folding that into yourself, folding that into your definition of who you are, and creating that wholeness where everything is okay. When I talk with patients, they often leave with prescriptions like go out and see the AM sun, see sunset, candle gaze, put your feet on the ground, support your mitochondria. But I sort of cackle as they leave, because I know that prescription, that list of things to do, are going to turn into these relationships where They feel loved and supported. So many of the people right now that I see in my office, for sure, but so many people out there right now don't feel safe.
Yeah.
They don't feel a sense of belonging. And humans can be really messy, right? That we have a lot of friction in us at times. But the sun rises every morning. It's there to greet us regardless. The ground beneath our feet holds us. That river still flows. So all of these things represent these beautiful relationships of safety and wholeness where our full being is accepted. The sun doesn't care what happened yesterday. It's not judging us for what happened 3 years ago. It accepts us for who we are as a whole human embedded in this tapestry of energy flow. And that's where true healing happens.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And if you hadn't had your major health challenges early in your life, in your career, you may never have written this book.
Absolutely.
You know, that made you dive deep on what true health really represents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time, so many people said, "Oh, you're going to be a great doctor because of this." And it was like, I, I am so sick, right? I am slated to have, parts of my body removed. It was really a time of great sickness, but it really was the turning point because it created this desire to get better, which then turned into a desire to understand this flow of energy.
Yeah.
How do our thoughts direct our biological function and our health? What is that? And that led to water and understanding these waves of energy. And that started with health, but then it quickly cascaded into, so how do I become a resilient person, stay in my center, and connect to the vastness that is this energy? Because that is quite exciting. I mean, it's never ending. It started with health, but it just keeps going.
Yeah, all the more so in the years we're moving into as we dive deeper into the cosmos and we connect more to the beings out there who are part of our family, etc. But another part of your wonderful work, Catherine, is it really embodies this idea, which I talk about a lot in my work, of living from the inside out, not the outside in. The current medical model is we will give you drugs for this part of your body that isn't working properly. Your book is so organic, and as you say, it's about the wholeness, but it is very empowering, and it starts with you on the inside, your thinking, your feeling, what you're broadcasting to the outer world, how the outer world is greeting you with that broadcast. And so, that is ultimately taking us out of the victim mode and into empowerment. I just think you've done a magnificent job. Talk to us about heart coherence as well, because that seems to be a really crucial part of the picture. This idea of coherence moving forward, something I'm very interested in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, last year I founded the Quantum Biology Health Institute, and we partnered here in the States with a university, University of California, San Diego, and their research department, Dr. Hemal Patel. He does all the research for Joe Dispenza, and so he's quite open. Yeah.
I've been to 14 of his advanced workshops quite some time ago, but yeah, because they're measuring coherence, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're measuring coherence on all kinds of different biological metrics, right? They actually just released an incredible study saying a week-long meditation retreat, probably just like the advanced retreats that you went on, rewire the brain neurological function. So absolutely incredible work. And when I was first introduced to Dr. Patel, he was talking about using different mitochondrial assessments for my patients. And I immediately thought, well, can't we do this for research? So we collaborated on a research project where we have 34 people all over the globe, almost every single continent, and they are practicing a daily heart coherence exercise for 42 days, and then we assess their mitochondrial function. And we're starting to get the results back, and it's looking really exciting. So I'm excited to publish this and get this information out. But you're right, heart coherence is that conductor, right? It's like all the different pieces in the body. What is coherence? It's when two things can act as one, two or more things can act as one, like two people dancing the tango or multiple droplets of water forming a wave in the ocean. That coherence, that ability to work as one, that heart coherence that emanates out from the heart, that when we drop into slow breathing and we build that electromagnetic field of the heart that emanates out, 6 feet or more around us, it carries energy and information that can then interact with the fields that are around us. And this guides our own internal state of coherence. It acts as a ripple. When we get into that state of heart coherence, it entrains our nervous system, our breath, our neurological function, our decision making, our ability to stay calm and rational. And really, it is this dance of entrainment where everything starts working together. Heart coherence and heart coherence practices utilize slow breathing. So it's about 6 breaths a minute. And that has a certain frequency. That's a 0.1 hertz of that 6 breaths a minute. That aligns with the spiraling flow of blood through our blood vessels. Again, 0.1 hertz. That aligns with our nervous system and the frequency of heart coherence. Again, 0.1 hertz, which aligns with the geomagnetic field of the earth. I mean, it's just this, again, idea of embedding ourselves in the flow. And how do we do that? Dropping down into calm breathing, into our heart center, with a feeling of love or gratitude or awe, and that ripples out throughout our body and then throughout the field around us. It's incredible. I was recently talking with Roland McCready of the Heart Math Institute, and he was doing research. It's not yet published, but he took people practicing heart coherence and he had them focus their heart coherence on a tree. So at the Heart Math Institute, there are trees behind the institute that were planted in the same area at the same time. So they're all pretty similar in environment. And he had them focus on one. He pointed a camera to one tree, and he had people focus their conscious heart coherence on this tree for 10 minutes. And they had electrodes in all the different trees. That specific tree dramatically, I mean, it was absolutely wild, the electrical conduction that spiked when heart coherence was being sent to it. It's this field that we can connect to all of it, to ourselves, to each other, our communities, our global community, the plants around us, nature, the earth, the animals, all of it is embedded in this flow of energy, and heart coherence unlocks that. It's incredible.
It's really exciting, isn't it, that something as simple as the breath can get you into this sense of interconnection with all living beings, even beyond our Earth. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me, actually, Catherine, a few years ago, I was doing a dowsing course with wonderful geobiologist Rory Duff, and we were told to go. It was a dowsing course, so we were told to hold the tree, as it were, turn our backs to the tree, and then walk out and measure with our dowsing rods the aura of the tree, the distance of the aura of the tree. And we all got around 8 feet in this aura. And we were then told to go back and send love to the tree. And I could see some people thinking, how do you send love to it? But anyway, we did it anyway, sent love to the tree. And we then remeasured, after some minutes, we remeasured the aura, and it had doubled. It had literally doubled. So quite remarkable. But in terms of the breath, just to really help people at home, Catherine, when you say slow the breath, is that an equal breath of 4 in, 4 out, or is it 2 in and longer out breath? Would you have any advice on that? Because this is such a free for all simple thing to do, isn't it? To put people into heart coherence. Do you have any advice on that?
I do, and I differ just a little bit from other people because I think we're all so individual. So I think what matters is the rhythm overall in a period of time. So if we can slow our breath down to about 6 breaths a minute, and so that looks like 10 seconds a breath. And so do we feel more comfortable inhaling for 4, holding, exhaling for 4, holding for a second? Do we feel the breath I really like is inhaling for 4 counts and then exhaling for 6 counts? So to me, it's finding that rhythm, that individual rhythm, because we're all so unique. So I don't have a what should your breath look like per breath. I have a slow it down so it's about 6 breaths a minute. And when we do that, it enters into that frequency, that 0.1 hertz that aligns everything. It's sort of like a Tetris. Everything just becomes aligned and we are embedded in that flow. And so for me, I want people to find what feels comfortable for them. Because if you can find comfort in just a little bit of a different breath technique, but it's still around that 6 breaths per minute, you're going to have that same frequency and you're going to have that internal coherence and comfort from the breath that you resonate with. So I don't really guide people on it has to be this rhythm. It just has to be slow and it has to be around 6 breaths a minute. When we make that exhale longer than our inhale, we're starting to send signals to our nervous system that we're safe, that we can rest, that we can repair. And so that's what I gravitate towards. I like to be in that parasympathetic state. I like to be relaxed. I like to feel safe. Other people gravitate towards equal breaths, like you said, 4 in, holding for a couple, 4 out. So it just really depends on where your nervous system is. And that's this whole framework of how we show up in the world and what makes sense for us. So that's what I really say. It's around that 6 breaths a minute. It's something that feels good and natural and you don't have to force it. And then everything will line up and entrain this frequency of resonant language and energy transfer.
And isn't it amazing that something free and that simple that every single person can do? Think of what it will do for you, your health, all the people you interact with, your environment. I mean, it's just amazing. Would you say that that is the most important thing, that if you had to communicate one single element of your book, would that be it? The heart coherence and the breath?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
And I know people want, what's the latest device and what's this and what's that. And I talk about all the science and all the different pieces. But if I had to choose one, it would be heart coherence. That is the conductor of our state of biology. And it connects us with everything around us. I mean, that Pam, that's why I chose to do heart coherence and mitochondrial research with the Institute, because mitochondrial science is so well accepted. And it's very much on the forefront of what we would call modern medicine, right? And so if we can get that inroad, saying that living a more heart-centered existence, leading from a state of heart coherence, is vital to our health. And we can get that in some of the medical advice. Think of the difference our society, our global society, would be in if people had that anchoring in heart coherence. It's so vital, so foundational.
Because it changes everything emotionally.
Yeah.
Once we start living from the heart rather than the head, move from the information age to a heart-centered age. But it's really fascinating, Catherine, that heart coherence affect the mitochondria, which are, as I understand it, little kind of electrical batteries that drive some of the energy in your body. So that's quite remarkable that changing your breath can actually affect, because they're so often depleted these days, aren't they? The mitochondria, if you've taken a lot of antibiotics or whatever, they've been hit pretty hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of them as little sensors, right? They are little antennas just in and of themselves. They're creating that liquid crystalline water within us. They are sensitive to our thoughts and emotions, our psychoneuroimmunology, right? Our conscious conduction, our electromagnetic environment influences our mitochondria. Light influences our mitochondria. Sound influences our mitochondria. They're really this hub where they take in this information and then they release ATP, the energy source, which so many people know them for, but they release energy, they release light, their own light emission from biophotons. They release entangled reactive species that can communicate throughout the body. They're really so much more than the energy source of the cell, which in and of itself is incredible, right? But they're doing so much more, and our state of consciousness affects our mitochondria. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've probably found that in the research too, that if you're depressed, your mitochondria will tend to be more depleted. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Catherine, what if people who live in England, or countries where we get very little sun in winter time? What would you advise?
That's a great question. I'm a little bit further south than you in England, but here too, we've said goodbye to the sun. We're not going to see it till March, right? It's behind this veil of cloudy, gray days. And the thing that I think we need to realize is that any time the sun is up, even if it's cloudy and dreary and gray, we are enveloped in a sea of infrared energy anytime we go outside. It doesn't have to be that beautiful tropical sunny day or that beautiful day that we would experience in summertime. That's great. That's wonderful. But those cloudy days have just as much impact through the infrared energy. So anytime the sun is up, if we go outside, we are completely wrapped in this sea of infrared energy. And infrared energy builds that water antenna within us. It influences our mitochondria. It supports mitochondrial health and function. It's so important. And so getting outside would be the first thing I would talk to people about, and how gray, dreary days hold their own medicine, right? And then I would talk with people about our relationship with seasons. In the dominant culture, it's this summer all the time, right? Go, 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 long hours, the sun goes down. Okay, put on the bright lights. We're still working. We're still going. It's this perpetual summer. And winter, late fall, winter, early spring, hold their own healing, their own medicine. The darkness, returning to that stillness. I love the juxtaposition and the seasonal rhythm. I love the energy and high output that we see in summer. We get that conversion of vitamin D through our UVB exposure. But when that goes away and we have colder days, shorter days, longer night times, bigger exposure to darkness, there's a medicine there. We secrete pineal melatonin. Melatonin is a master antioxidant. It's so vital to our health, but also it's aligned with DMT and deeper states of consciousness. So if we can think of winter as our time to really reap and harvest melatonin, a time to rest, a time to come into stillness, I think that this idea that we have constant hours and a constant work schedule and a constant light environment is really causing a lot of dysfunction in our health and our state of that coherence and consciousness. Winter is a time for us to become still. It's a time for us to reap infrared energy outside, also sitting by a fire, gazing at a candle. All of these things are something that we have evolved with as humans on this earth. I mean, we used to have this biphasic sleep where we'd sleep and then we'd wake up for a few hours and then go back to sleep. And if you read texts from that time period where people would readily adopt this biphasic sleep and have that time in the darkness where they would write by candlelight, that was the time when they were creative. That was the time when they could access different realms of information. And we've lost that with this one season we have all year. So for us in the northern latitudes, I would say embrace that. Go out when it's cold, go out when it's gray, turn the lights down when the sun goes down. Utilize things. I've got a salt lamp behind me right here that we turn to when the lights go down. All the little salt lamps go on, right? We kind of immerse ourselves in this orange glow like a fire or a candle would emit. And we lower our sort of nervous system excitement. We play board games, we listen to audiobooks, we stare at each other, at the salt lamp, at candles. We have that rest and repair, rejuvenation season, that cozy season where you snuggle. Snuggling is a great way to have infrared energy and all the benefits. And I think that embracing this rather than putting it off, I think a lot of us enter into the new year. This idea, new year, new you, all these goals we have in January, we end up there exhausted because we've been fighting against winter rather than working with it. We're seasonal beings. So embracing that, I think, holds so much medicine and ability to repair.
Yeah, it's beautifully said, and it's a kind of creative incubation period, isn't it? If you think of, plant bulbs in the soil, all that creativity that's going to burst forth as soon as we get to springtime. So, yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with Kelly Kolodny on this because she's talking about the holy womb code and the darkness and that incubation period of great creativity. So, yeah, it really beautifully said. Beautiful. So, Catherine, just finally, what would you like to see as the future for quantum biology going forwards?
That's a great question. Pam, I'm really hopeful for a reconciliation between modern medicine, modern science, and ancient wisdom. so much of what we cast aside in the scientific revolution. In the 1600s, we were getting incredible new technology, telescopes to see out into the heavens, microscopes to see this microscopic world we'd never seen before. But we tossed aside anything we couldn't see, right? All these invisible fields of energy became unscientific, not valid. And now we're understanding that that was a mistake. And so I'm hopeful that there's a reconciliation and that that ancient wisdom is pulled back into our everyday lives, into our everyday medicine, and not just the wisdom, the cultures, that we can embrace the wisdom, the current day wisdom of these ancient indigenous people and their relationships with the world. You know, quantum biology reduces things down to the electron and the protons and photons of light. But once you get to that level of reduction, you see it's all interconnected. And if we can adopt that into our everyday lives, then we are intimately connected with everything around us, and we have a responsibility to tend to it just as we have a responsibility to tend to our health. And so I'm hopeful that there will be a return, a remembering of what we have forgotten, and a return to these relationships that we've really walked away from, because that is going to change things dramatically in such a beautiful and brilliant way.
Yeah, it's a wonderful future to look forward to, and I know more and more people are becoming open to it, and
Yeah.
with more compassion for the animal world, more connection to the trees, a greater sense of empathy and telepathy, and you know, I think we have a really beautiful future ahead of us, and you are going to be a real pioneer, a real leading light in the health area. And you know, I've loved this conversation, but I hope people have really not only loved it but really benefited from it practically. That from this 1 hour conversation that we've shared, you can just go away and do something as simple as using the slow breath, using that 6 breaths a minute. Even that will start to change your health in a fairly significant way. But really recommend that you explore Catherine's book, because I loved it. It just had such clarity and practicality, as I say, but stuffed with information. I don't know how you did it all. It's quite an achievement, Catherine. And where can people find you to learn more about your work?
Yes, well, thank you, Pam. Those words mean so much, especially coming from you. I'm such a huge fan of your work and your role now ushering in this new time. And so, thank you. And people can find more about me. I didn't get exciting or creative with my name. I'm just Dr. Catherine Clinton. So I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube as Dr. Catherine Clinton. My website is drcatherineclinton.com, and I'm now offering a pre-order gift for anyone that wants to pre-order the gift, or excuse me, pre-order the book Optimize. And that you can find at drcatherineclinton.com/optimize. And I'm offering my Unlocking Your Quantum Biology course. It goes into depth with these different steps, as well as my last 3 quantum biology wellness summits, where I interview experts all about this topic. And I'm just so excited to get this information out there, help people, and like we were talking about before recording, just